2, action.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions Podcast. And I won't say it's been the longest time to get this person on the episode, but it's taken quite a while. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, Mr. Martin Dr. Martin Dinov.
Thank you. Yes.
Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Andrew. Privilege and honor to finally do this with you. It's taking some time to arrange. My apologies. I am in Tokyo.
No, you don't have to apologize.
I'm in Tokyo.
It's worth waiting for. Worth waiting for, Martin. You know, it's not room 101. It's episode 101. So
very privileged to have that special number. Yeah. Episode 5 in binary.
I'm going to go backwards now. Okay. You snuck it out. So I was going to ask you where you were joining us from. It sounds like you're in somewhere rather far away from London, where I am today. Whereabouts are you today?
Yeah, Tokyo. Last night in Tokyo, actually flying back to London tomorrow. So it's been here for about 3 weeks for business, and it's good to be back home.
Oh, it's good to be back at home. That's what I thought. Well, anyway, we'll get into that.
yeah, sure.
Well, yeah, I suppose qualifying that, I suppose when you say it's good to be back home, maybe you can do a bit of an introduction. I mean, what's getting you up in the morning at the moment? I know it's probably an unearthly hour over there, but I think there is a bit of a segue to Japan, isn't there? There's kind of like a bit of a intertwined into your backdrop of your life on this planet so far. Maybe you can explain to the audience.
Happy to, yeah. I mean, I kind of grew up here. I moved here when I was 1, and I'm so sorry. There's a bunch of echo. I'm really sorry. Let's see if that's better. But yeah, I grew up here. I came here when I was 1, stayed here for 5 years, and I came back when I was 13 for 5 more years. So it's Japan's close to my heart. It's my first proper language that I learned. And haven't been back here in a while, and now I'm here for business. First time doing business in Japan, which is very interesting. It's different than just living here as a teenager. Other backdrop, Bulgarian parents, born in Bulgaria, spent time in Japan, about 10 years in total. Spent 10 years in Austria. Then I spent about 11, 12 years in the UK, became British along the way, spent some time in the Netherlands. Jumped around a little bit.
That's a rich tapestry, that is, Martin.
Yeah, well,
when
sorry, I think there's a bit of a lag.
There's a few miles between us.
It's quite. Yeah, it's about a second or two. It's about a second or two. Yeah. I was just going to say that when you grow up a certain way, it's maybe interesting to other people. To you, it's just life. It's just how you grow up. It's a bit like if you told me about your life, I'd be like, wow, man, that's interesting. That's certainly not my life, but to you, that's your life. That's how you grow up. So I don't know any other life.
Has it been, I suppose, quick question? Well, no. I mean, I suppose a question to you, because obviously, I've been to Japan on a number of occasions, and I suppose the first time I went there, it was quite a mind meld, as I would call it, because it was so different to Western culture, where I came up, where I was brought up. So, but really different from just like open your eyes and really kind of just so different, but in a positive way. I loved it. It was amazing. So I don't know. I mean, suppose you sat there in Tokyo today. I mean, have you felt kind of re-inspired and rejuvenated by going back over there? Has it unleashed what you found when you were younger?
Definitely not what I found here when I was younger. It's a very different experience. I don't have the same pair of eyes, so to speak. Rejuvenated, yes, but I mean, I get that anytime I go to a very different culture. I go to the US. It's very different. I mean, Japan is maybe more different than the US compared to London. In that sense, it's there's definitely that cultural contrast, But I think you can get that just going to a sufficiently different country. Even like going to the Netherlands, where I go quite often for work, because that's where our head office is of my company. it's even that's fairly different to the UK where I'm based now. But don't get me wrong. Definitely, it's nice to be back. It's very refreshing. It's very refreshing to be back.
Have you been polishing up your Japanese skills then? Because I think you said that your first language that you learned was Japanese. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
right. Or were you
feeling
a bit rusty?
I felt a bit rusty. It's come back pretty quick. It took a few days, and I think like my brain's just readjusted to it very quickly.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you are the look. I mean, I've actually had another CEO on the show who I recorded from. He was in Sofia in Bulgaria, obviously obviously you probably sounds like your parents were originated from.
That's right. That's where I was born. Yeah.
So you're the second Bulgarian, you could say, originating CEO. But we never had an episode from anybody in Japan, so this is a worldwide first.
Who's the first Bulgarian?
It was a guy who, I need to check his name actually. It was a guy, he was basically CEO of a, like the kind of the bit where you're trying to do CSR initiatives, corporate social responsibility initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically around, he got a platform where how you could measure CSR for different corporates.
Right.
So he basically he was building a software company.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so it was about a year ago he came on the show. Yeah,
but he didn't dial in from Japan.
To what you're in.
Yeah. And he didn't dial in from Japan. Yeah.
No, he didn't dial in from. Yeah, he didn't dial in from Japan. Like an unearthly hour in the middle of the night. Yeah, like you do.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I suppose for the people that are listening people that are listening on today's episode, what the kind of thing you mentioned you've obviously worked in different countries. What's your field of kind of interest? What gets you up in the morning these days, or in the middle of the night? What are you spending most of your time on?
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it brief, but I mean, I'm a software person at heart. I started coding when I was like roughly 80 years old. I got into biology, neuroscience, human neuroscience, AI, and this intersection of like technology and human biology, human potential, human behavior. Did a PhD on that at Imperial in London, focus on brain-computer interfaces, and kind of extending that work now with my startup, Maaind. We're not doing BCIs, like brain-computer interfaces, but we're doing an extension of that, which is how do you track the state of a person in the real-world settings, in real time, in sort of easily doable ways, because we're not walking around with brain-computer interface headsets just yet. Maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10, maybe in 15, but not today. So what we're doing is like, how do we actually measure and use that in useful ways in real-world settings with other kinds of data? I mean, in our case, it's like tone of voice, speech, heart rate data from wearables, a few different approaches. But yeah, what gets me up in the morning is like, it's just exciting building the future. It's exciting building the future.
I mean, that sounds quite futuristic. I mean, I was when you were talking, I was thinking about the thing where I don't know what it is that Elon's talking about doing, where you insert a hardware device into somebody's head.
Neuralink, I don't know if that's.
I mean, is that how you would this? Yeah, Neuralink. Yeah, is that kind of what you would call this kind of thing called brain-computer interface? Is that where it's going, or is it something that's a bit more subtle than that?
Yes, I mean that's an invasive, that's an implant, right? That's an invasive interface. That goes into your brain. In the case of what they're working on, there's a few other companies doing that have already done that. It's been used for a couple of decades for a couple of clinical kind of things. There's deep brain stimulation and like depression for severe depression. That's had a lot of success. Parkinson's, controlling movement. It's been used for a couple of different things, clinically, experimentally. There's also non-invasive BCIs where you don't put anything inside the brain or the skull, and it's kind of just outside. That's also been used for like anxiety treatment, depression treatment, peak performance, and like sports people and peak performance kind of management improvement. So there's different ways to use it. And then there's like control systems, both invasive and non-invasive, like controlling drones, controlling cursors on a screen, controlling robots by imagining or thinking certain things. Like typically you have like motor control, so like you imagine moving your fists, let's say, or your feet, and you can control different dimensions of a system. Let's say a cursor on a screen or a drone that's flying around, So there's different applications. There's clinical and military and kind of user interface. I'm just going to wait for a second or two after I say something because there's a bit of a lag.
So there's a book I've been reading, which I think you know about this book here, yeah, by Matthew Cobb, who's the director. I think he's professor of zoology at Manchester University. And I mean, this is definitely something. If you want to learn more about the brain, I'd definitely read this because it's absolutely mind blowing about the complexity of the topic. Yeah. And actually, I was when I read the kind of the last chapter, I was hoping he was going to tell me the answer, but actually, he basically says that they're still trying to work it out, even all these centuries later. People are trying to analogize brain to be, I mean, I suppose the logical one is like a computer. Yeah. But there's a lot of people challenge that, haven't they? They said it's not a computer. It's like it's not hardware and software. I mean, he used the phrase, I think, wetware. I don't know if you're aware of that phrase, but he said there's this thing called wetware where you can't actually describe it as a computer. It's just, but they say there's like a petabyte of data in your brain, or the capacity of about a petabyte. So it's kind of like I didn't realize how complex and how many disciplines were involved. You've got biology, you've got psychology, you've got computer science, you've got physics. They're all kind of like, mingled together, aren't they? Or it's like a mashup of all those different disciplines.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting, right? And I think there's different ways to think about it. One way to think about it is there's so much we still don't know, and that's true. But we've come a long way since 300 years ago, and there's tons we know now. There's tons you can do in neuroscience, clinically, practically. I mean, I mentioned a couple of kind of applications, right? If you have a epilepsy, nowadays we can identify where that's coming from. Typically, you can cut out a tumor or whatever it is, and you can fix that. You can fix depression, not always, certain kinds. It's not perfect, but it works. And it's like, that there's that other perspective, which is there's, a whole lot that we do know. To me, the most interesting thing is like bridging the cellular level, where there's a lot that's really understood, and a high level kind of functional networks, they're called, large scale functional networks, which you typically measure with like fMRI, so functional magnetic resonance imaging, or EEG. So you get like large scale functional networks, like at a large scale, how does the brain work? What are the large scale patterns? And then you have like cellular level, but connecting those different levels is probably the most interesting thing that's not solved yet. Bridging different levels of understanding. That's tough. We're not quite there yet. I'm pretty confident we'll get there, and are getting there probably pretty soon.
Well, I mean, the analogy seems to be in this book obviously it's 2019, I think it's a few years old, but it's like every cell is like a mini computer, the actual capacity. So, I mean, you think about how many neurons and how many cells are in a brain. I mean, it's just, I mean, it literally is brain, it's like blow your brains out. It's kind of like, literally, the complexity is another level.
Yeah, but let's talk about that just for a moment.
So what got you into this topic?
So you mentioned petabytes. Let's say it's a petabyte of data. That's actually something we can do with digital computers today, right? So we have far more storage capacity. We can process that kind of data. It's a lot of data. It will take a while to process, but we have that kind of storage capacity now in digital computers. So if it's only a petabyte of data that the brain is storing, then we're there with digital computers and in kind of raw storage, maybe computing capacity as well. So I think there's a lot more to it than just how much data is stored there. It's like, how is it processed? The algorithms that are playing out. The algorithms are super important, right? Like you can have a bunch of like digital computing hardware that's really powerful, but if you don't have the right algorithms to use that hardware intelligently, it's just a bunch of silicon and metal, let's say, right, and plastic. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And you don't get the right output or the right results.
Right.
Yeah. So I suppose a quick question linked to that is, I mean, because this is such a big field. I mean, I suppose I'm appreciating how complex it is. What for you personally? What got you into this? What was what happened in your life that actually made you think, I want to go and learn more about this? I want to even do a doctorate in it, a PhD in it. I mean, that's a pretty big commitment from a personal point of view. What was there something that happened, or what? Or do you just have this kind of wanderlust around, knowing more?
Yeah, I mean, it's both. I'm a curious person, and it's like, what's more interesting than understanding yourself and arguably every other person, right? Like, this is how we perceive the world. This is how we behave and think and feel. And there's outer space and there's inner space. And in some ways, we understand outer space better than we understand inner space. So that's pretty interesting if you can understand the machinery with which you do everything else. That makes everything else easier to do. So I mean, purely intellectually and experientially, what's more exciting than understanding yourself in some kind of at different levels? Let's say, technically speaking, at different levels, right? What's more exciting than that? I mean, I read a bunch of science fiction, and that definitely contributed to that. You mentioned wetware. I mean, wetware is a term that's used in science fiction a lot, actually. I want to say that Neuromancer published, I think, in 1989 already, or maybe it's 1984. I think William Gibson already used that term in Neuromancer, which is a couple of decades back.
That's cool. So, I mean, in terms of the work that you've done, I mean, you're saying that you're connecting this, there's this concept they call brain-computer interface, but you said you're not doing that. Is there? I mean, obviously, it sounds like you've founded a business now to actually work on this particular area. What was the kind of genesis of that? Why did you decide to do that? You could have, I presume, because if you're doing a PhD, you could have stayed doing research work, or you could have stayed in academia. What was the pull that thought, I want to do something that's actually a real business rather than staying in the academic sphere? Any thoughts around that?
I mean, I never really wanted to be an academic. I did the PhD because it's a fascinating topic. It was something to do for some time until I figure out how I want to apply my interests in a real world setting. And kind of have a kind of a job. It's sort of a job, especially if you're funded and kind of, anyway, it's sort of a job. So there's that answer, but also I've always wanted to actually bring something into the real world. It's much more exciting than sort of just working by yourself in the ivory tower, like writing papers and whatnot. I mean, that's fine. And also the world's changed, there's a lot of very important work happening, arguably in a lot of spaces. Much more important work is happening in companies, let's say, than in universities. It depends on the field. For example, basic research tends to still happen much more in universities, but applied research has shifted much more towards companies. There's a lot more money there. There's much more private funding now, whereas before there was a lot more public funding, relatively speaking, is my understanding, and so the private funding inevitably goes to companies, for profit in some sense, right? So if you want to bring something to the real world, you can do it from a university setting, but it's very tricky. Like, what are you going to do? Publish a bunch of papers, and then what? How do the papers actually change people's lives?
So that was kind of like to making it real. I suppose that's the phrase that you would maybe use to bring it to real life and actually make it happen and make it impact people in the world.
Build something that people
I think the
can
thing
use.
you mentioned when you started.
Yeah, sorry. There's quite a bit of a lag. Build something that people can use and that people can actually benefit from, right? In some tangible way. And, with papers, you can certainly do that, but it's not as direct. Like, Einstein published some papers and it took a while. Now they've changed the world. GPS, whenever you use GPS, we're using, relativity and adjusting for time dilation. So that's pretty important. There's all sorts of other applications of that work, but it's taken a while, and so depends on the field you're in. It's fine writing papers. I have nothing against writing papers, but yeah.
And I suppose that, given the kind of the hot topic, I know that this last week, literally in the UK, there was a big conference at Bletchley Park, and even Mr. Musk, that we touched on a bit earlier, flew over and had a seminal meeting or interview with Mr. Sunak about AI safety. So this kind of thing, what you said you're working on now, is this kind of intersection between neuroscience and AI. What's your kind of perspective on that? Is that something that's becoming more real, more possible?
I'm sure you've used GPT by OpenAI, right? ChatGPT or any of the GPT variants. I think that was a massive step change. I mean, AI has been around for a while. Google is AI. For a long time, AI has been something in the background, and we've not always thought about it as AI. Whether it's playing games, there's a lot of AI in computer games. Self-driving cars. If you think about it, that's obviously all of that is AI. GPT is just very explicit. Like, you're really talking to this agent, this like seemingly, let me take that back. Practically speaking, an intelligent entity. It's not seemingly intelligent. It's actually intelligent, You can have intelligible conversations with it, and ask it things and whatnot. We live in a very different world today. And it's not just because of GPT, but my point is like, we need to think about AI much more today. It might even be too late to start thinking about some of the possible consequences because it's already widespread. It's everywhere. It is everywhere now. It's used in, trading, financial trading. It's used everywhere. It's like the genie's out of the bottle. What do we do with it now?
I was just thinking exactly the same phrase when you just said that. The genie's definitely out of the bottle. So, but I suppose that's the thing, is you were saying that the work you were doing now was more around the kind of connection between, this whole neuroscience world, this whole biology, psychology, the human state, and then also, what you can do with AI and with data. That sounds like a really interesting fusion. How did you come across that kind of, I suppose, hypothesis? What was the trigger behind that?
Yes, I mean, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's about understanding the biology, the physiology, the psychology. Like, how do we perceive, act, feel, think? And there's a lot of data we have of that now, and a lot of that is not being used yet very effectively. You could use it through brain-computer interfaces, but again, we're not there yet. At sort of consumer level, broadly speaking, there's some niche applications, important but niche applications. So what I'm trying to do now with my current company Maaind is really building this like emotional intelligence layer, if you will, where we plug in different forms of data to understand a human being, understand an individual, and then you can feed that back to them through recommendations, content interventions. So you have a feedback loop. You want to understand the user, the individual better, and then you want to support them better. And as you support them through some kind of recommendation, content intervention, you can see what the effect of that is, and then you can tweak it. And that's the feedback loop, right? And long term, the vision there is to really understand people in many different settings and many different real world settings, not lab settings, not that ivory tower where the papers are written, but real world settings where people have conversations, they drive cars, they go to the shop, they go to work, right? And build models of how people think, feel, behave. And over time, we want to plug in more and more data sources, more and more data points that we can capture from people to understand people better and better. And then you can really, the better you understand a person, the better you can support them. I'm just waiting for that lag to come through.
And the reason that the problem that's out there today is that I presume is that because we don't really understand people's emotional state, or the products and services we're using today, we don't really. They're a bit dumb. Is that right? They're not very intelligent. Is that right? Or the experiences, they're not an intelligent experience. Is that what you would say? Is that the problem you're trying to solve?
I mean, intelligence is a tricky word. I think we'd have to define it first, and maybe we don't need to do that right now, given the limited time we have. But they're quite effective for what they're designed for, and what they're designed for oftentimes is like targeting content so people will buy something more effectively, and that's fine. But they're not designed for well-being. They're not designed for improving necessarily human flourishing, human well-being and performance. But they could be designed for that. But to design them for that, you need to actually understand and be able to measure that. I think it was Peter Drucker's quote, right? It's often said, Peter Drucker, the management theorist, who says, what you can measure, you can manage, I think was the quote. So what we're doing now is building the measurement infrastructure so that we can manage well-being and the human state much better. And it's like, if you want to improve the state of a person in a certain direction, well, first you need to know where they are, and you need to measure, like, are you going the right direction? If you can't measure it, how do you know you're doing that? Right now, the things we're optimizing software for is like click-through rate. Did that user purchase something or not? And that's fine, but that's not what we're trying to do at Maaind. We're trying to add in another layer of optimization to software and devices, which is like you could do both at the same time. You can optimize for click-through rates, for sales conversion, while also optimizing for decrease of stress or improvement in mood.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Is that kind of to deal with, like the thing they say about post-purchase? There's like a dip, isn't there? People have a high about purchasing something, and then they have a dip afterwards. So maybe trying to avoid that, the decay curve of the mood and emotion after they realize they've spent all that money. I don't know.
I'm not sure that's going to ever go away.
But I mean, it's an interesting area.
Yeah, go for
it. No, I mean, I think it's an interesting area because it's kind of like it's bringing, there's a lot of obviously technology around us all everywhere now, but actually, how do we make it more human? Which sounds like that's kind of what you're trying to bridge that gap or make those connections. And people are scared about robots and the singularity moment that's going to happen at some point in the future. So I suppose. Sounds like impacting people and helping them to feel better is going to be a good thing.
Yeah, I was just gonna stop you there because how do you know that we're not in the singularity moment, in the sense that it's not a moment in time, it's a period of time, and it really feels to me like we're in it. I mean, things are moving, exponentially quickly if you plot them on, it depends what you're looking at. But say power production by price, obviously, digital hardware capability plotted against price, storage, compute power. All of these things are either exponential, in some cases super exponential even. At what point have we hit the singularity? We might be in it.
Well, I suppose
it's pretty weird.
I suppose I'm talking about this. Well, no, I agree with you on that, Martin. Definitely. I mean, I think that the thing is, I suppose it's that thing about they talk about, the danger with AI and this safety thing is about when the machines become conscious and aware, and they, then I'm not saying you have, what's the control? Yeah, where's the human machine relationship? Because effectively the humans have helped to design the computers, but then when the computers become super intelligent and more intelligent than humans, allegedly in the future, or maybe even now, then is that a risk to the future of the human race? I thought that's a big statement there, but that's the thing that I suppose that's coming. Can you see that in the horizon?
I think we're there right now. And these are the early days where machines are, AI machines, colloquially, broadly speaking, are better than humans at many things already. And it's very hard to see what's going on when you're in the middle of it. And that's why we have historians and history lessons to interpret the past, right? And look at it. And in retrospect, a lot of things are a lot clearer. And so, self-driving cars today are already better than people driving. Medical diagnostics, based on imagery, AI interpreting, those images, looking for certain, pathologies, that's already in many cases better than human expert doctors. You have AI that can program better than many programmers, junior programmers now in many cases. I mean, GPT can do that. You have trading bots that do better than the average trader. Like risk to humanity, they're already there. The risk to humanity are already there. I think long term, I'm of the opinion that you can't really control this thing. Like you can't even control pre-AI societally transformative technologies like the train and transportation, social media. You have a lot of secondary, tertiary effects, and you can't control these things. Why do we think we're going to control semi or fully autonomous systems, increasingly autonomous systems that are better than us faster than us and better than us at making decisions? I think all we can do is do our best, and try to shape the world to be a little, to bias it towards better outcomes. It's not predictable though, it's not deterministic. You can, I saw the government post in the UK after the Bletchley Park AI summit, and there's a post, and I believe it ends with, I think the last two paragraphs or so, the person that wrote it says something to the effect of, these things are not determined. These things are up to us. We design them, and it's up to us what the world looks like. Nothing is inevitable. I think that's an extreme view. That's not true. I'm not saying things are inevitable, but things are certainly not deterministically predictable in how we design these systems, right? So all we can do, with regards to AI safety, future of humanity, is bias things towards what we think is a better future and keep adapting and observing close and keep adapting, right? You can't design the future in a particular way that it will definitely work out in that way, right? That's just not how it works.
I thought you were actually going to say, I've read that, but I was waiting for the bottom of the actual article to say something like, "So long and thanks for the fish," like out of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
right?
Like a Douglas Adams quote.
Yeah,
but obviously the government is trying to take it too, very seriously.
Yeah, I think the last sentence references Turing and says, Turing said, "We can only see a short distance ahead, but we see that much remains to be done." And then the person that wrote that says, "Now we can see much further ahead." I don't think that's true. I think that's I think that's not true. I think we can see even
it's
a shorter.
Optimistic.
The world is more complex now and less predictable, not more predictable. And it's we need some humility. That's a dangerous point of view, that we can understand better what's coming up next.
Well, I think the interesting thing was, well, I mean, there's also those headline seekers where it says that, you know, Elon was saying that we're not going to have any job, you know, there'll be no jobs in the future. All certain jobs will be completely eradicated, and we'll be all sat there, doing I suppose a higher level thing. I watched all the 50-minute interview with Elon, but I'm sure everybody will probably be looking at that over the next few weeks. It's a fascinating time to be alive.
It sure is.
Watching all this history kind of play out. I mean, when I got involved in the tech industry, a few decades ago, it wasn't the kind of sexy thing to do. It was, why are you doing that? And now it's absolutely a centerpiece to, what comes in the news every day and what's going around the world, which is quite incredible. So it's kind of like, I mean, I suppose that's why I was interested in getting you on the show, because I think it's a very interesting background you've got. When you dig into this neuroscience area, and with the stuff that you've been doing at Imperial, and you realize the depth and breadth of things around understanding the brain, it's mind blowing. It's really it's quite, and the diversity of the kind of topics you have to learn to appreciate how complex it is. That's the thing that's kind of been an eye opener for me. So, I mean, all credit to you, Martin. All credit to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Yeah. No, I mean, it's fascinating. You can definitely approach this from all sorts of angles. I only understand some of them a little bit. There is a lot more to be known. Hopefully, we can learn fast enough to upgrade ourselves as the AI gets upgraded, so we can keep up. There's a few people speaking about this. Obviously, I wanted to go back to something you said. You said it's interesting watching history unfold. I mean, just to contradict myself a little bit with what I said earlier, I mean, even though it's not entirely deterministic, like, we are designing the future as well to some extent, right? So I get what you're saying. I mean, I don't want to nitpick, but I feel like we shouldn't just watch it unfold. Let's design it to the best extent possible.
Oh, you mean don't be just an innocent observer, actually participate. Right. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. And more and more, as we're tied in networks, and we have like ability to amplify our thoughts, our actions, through all sorts of systems and networks, we have more and more responsibility to do our best in bringing the best of ourselves, as we interact in the world, and try to design the best world possible, every day with whatever we do. Whether it's building AI systems or just, talking to your friends or whatever.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I suppose just to finish off today's episode, because I know you need to go and get some sleep at some point, is one of the things that we ask is, I suppose, through people's journeys, if you were kind of giving back to people that are listening into this episode in, driving their car, or being at home, or being, at work, what would be and given that you've actually become a founder of a business, or along with your co-founder, actually you've created a business, you've transferred from academia into kind of business, and now you're growing a business, and obviously internationally as well, which is really impressive. What would be your kind of takeaways and sound bites and things, pearls of wisdom, you could call it, that you want to drop on the audience today before we conclude this episode?
Yeah, I don't know about wisdom. That might not be the right word I'll use for myself here necessarily, but there are a lot of things to be built. That's part of designing the world, and I encourage people to go out and build things to make the world a better place, more interesting place. If you want to shape the world a certain direction, go out and do that. Don't just sit around and wait for the next product to come out. I mean, it's a lot of work building a company, but everyone that's done it knows that. You know that, Andrew. I see that smile of knowing, So maybe pearl of wisdom, maybe again too strong a word, but pearl of wisdom is like, it's stressful. If you want to build something, be patient and don't expect results, next day. Even with GPT writing your code, don't expect results next day. It's a journey. It's a journey. It's a process, and it's something to do with your life, and it's a cool thing to do with your life. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. It's not the only thing to do, to build a company, but it's also very rewarding. It's stressful. It's very rewarding. And I mean, you know all that. You've been there as well. It's there's no free lunch. You don't get the rewards without the investment.
Life would be dull if you didn't do something challenging and interesting.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. So here we are.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So if people want to know a bit more about Maaind or what you've been doing in this kind of area, what's the best way to learn more about Dr. Martin Dinov, what you and your team are doing? What's the best place to go?
Yeah, so we do have a website, Maaind.com, MAIND.com, but we're just updating it now. I mean, you can go on the website today. We're launching a new version soon. But follow us on LinkedIn, write me an email, write on LinkedIn, and talk to us. We're a very open bunch. We like talking to people, collaborating, universities, with companies, all sorts of people. But yeah, mostly LinkedIn, website. Email, I guess. Email is still a thing, right?
I think it is, yeah. I don't think they switched it off yet.
Not just yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today. Thanks for staying up so late and joining us from Japan. You're in Tokyo today, yeah? So Tokyo, Japan.
I'm in Tokyo, yeah.
Dr. Martin Dinov, who's co-founder and CEO of Maaind. Traversing the world of neuroscience and AI, which is a very interesting topic, and helping people to get in a better place and from a well-being point of view. And that's been Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions Podcast. Tune in the future for a future episode. That was episode 101, not room 101, but episode 101. So thanks, Martin, for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. This was fun.
It was definitely fun. It was definitely worth waiting for. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot. Yeah. All right.